Welcome back, everybody. It's Wednesday, November 8th. John Aravosis here at the Aravosis Report, coming to you live from Washington, D.C. We're going to talk about the latest news from Israel and Gaza and Ukraine as well. As always, I will get TikTok rolling on my iPad. One moment here. You guys are on my laptop. Oops, too much stuff open on my iPad. Here we go. There we go. TikTok. I'll even grab my TikTok microphone this time, since I always forget that. All right, here we go. Zoom, microphone on, live, go live. All right, excellent. Anyway, hello all. Feel free to say where you're all from. Oops, there we go. Mirroring. Okay, TikTok's rolling. Hello, everybody. Hello, Sally and Ann. Anyway, how are we all today? Nice kind of warm day again in DC. We've been having just ridiculously nice weather. Hey, TikTokers. Hey, Amanda. Oh, Big Hawk. Oh, Fjorton. I don't remember your name before. Hello. Maybe you've been here. Sweden. Ellie. Ash. Hey, guys. Carlos. Oh, what is going on, guys? As always, we're going to start in a couple minutes. We're going to wait, 2 minutes or so for folks to join us. Thank you, Crazy American. Have you been? I'm sorry. I don't recognize your name. I didn't see your name before. Just because, the Fjorton just sounds like I've never heard the name before. It sticks in my head. Hey, Jetta, thank you for that. And Macabre and Sexeed. No problem. Cassandra, thank you for the gifts. Oh, Martuja in Finland. Hello. Stonehenge, that's cool. Hey, Neolithic, thanks for that. LWD, Ellie. Okay, Conquerangan, good to see you. Oh, I was glitching. I hope I wasn't glitching. It was my connection glitching. Oh, thank you, Joe. And who else? Kim. I'm going to yawn. I can tell this is a yawning day. Hey, Boppo. Oh, I shouldn't be yawning. I didn't have a nap, but I did have my tea today, so you'd think that would help. Your connection? Okay. Oh, thank you, Triff, for the hearts. I'm drinking a little more iced tea just in case. Oh, thank you, Alex, for the eyes. Having just a little bit of iced tea to help me out here. Hey, Pedro. Hey, Soren in Denmark. Lovely. Elizabeth, good to see you. Thank you, Richard. So we lost our pandas today. I don't know if everybody heard. China took back their pandas from Washington, D.C. today. They're really, there's a nasty streak to China. I don't really get it. I really don't. It's very weird. Hey, Kronos. It's just a very weird, it's like this little spite. They're like the Russians, actually. There's this spiteful, nasty thing. And it again sort of goes to show, I think, what they don't understand about the world. But they took their pandas back. We've had the pandas for 50 years, and they took them back. Thank you, Susan. Very sweet of you. They took them back. They left town today. Kind of bitchy. I don't know. It's like, thank you, Elizabeth. And now they're trying to charge for the pandas and like $500,000 a year per panda. Honestly, the irony is they've become total capitalists, which is sort of the funny thing about it. But our national zoo wanted to continue with the pandas, and the Chinese said no. Oh, hey, Edsel. I haven't seen you in a while. I was wondering what happened to you. Hope you're doing okay. I thought maybe like you disappeared on us, which would be okay, but sad. It's just, anyway, I just think it's obnoxious. So they took the pandas back. We went on, I went on Monday to see them because I knew they were leaving soon, but I didn't know they were leaving today. So Monday, and actually I got 2 nice pictures of them. I thought I sent my nephew both. No, I'm not finding. Oh, here it is. Hang on. I'll show you my panda pictures from Monday. Now, this is the first time I've gone to our zoo and actually been able to see the damn pandas. You always see them either back in the bushes or in their cage or their enclosure where you can barely see them. And literally, you can't see them at all. Oh, my iPhone doesn't like TIFFs. Okay, evil iPhone. Oh, there it is. Oh, come on. I guess my iPhone can't see a TIFF. Well, here is one that I sent my nephew. Oh, it's being evil. Thank you, Triff. Well, I'm only going to have one picture that I can show you because my other one isn't showing here. I did send this one to my nephew, and he made it black and white for me. But it's kind of cool. It's because it was it was like, I call this one poignant panda, but kind of cool because he was sort of in the sunlight, but in the shade. And it was kind of a neat picture with the mix of the sunlight and the shade, trying to get it so you don't have the light on him. But he was kind of cool. But anyway, never had the pandas. I never been able to see them actually sitting in the sun before. It was really pretty, but again, what do you do? They're gone. They're gone. I just think it's stupid. Like I said, it was a great publicity thing for China. And now, thank you, adventurers. Now the publicity thing for China is going to be people going, where are the pandas? Oh, the Chinese got mad and took them back. It just makes them look bitchy. I really do. I think it's just not a very smart move by the Chinese. So what do you do? Like I said, they're like the Russians in this. They're not very smart politically sometimes. They're really, it is petty. It makes them look small, honestly. It's too bad. Hey, Noah. All right, guys. So we've got a lot. I mean, I tried to cut the news back. There is a ridiculous quantity of news. I apologize, but we're going to be talking for a while. C'est la vie. As always, I'm going to start actually with Israel, then we'll do Ukraine. A lot of news on both topics, to be honest. Actually, what I'm really going to start about is talking about the U.S. elections, because we did have some elections last night, and very interesting results here. Thank you, Dawn, for that. I think we were starting to watch some of it while we had our live, not my live, but my hangout last night on Discord. Thank you, Joe and Dawn. But just a reminder to folks, please do keep the gifts coming. Gifts on TikTok, gifts on YouTube, super chats. I will always answer super chats right away. And I will always do a thank you for all the gifts that fly on the screen on TikTok as well. So thank you for those. The bigger gifts that fly, the little ones. There are too many roses. I love the roses. There are too many to thank all of you guys. But do thank you. Jordy, thank you for that. All right. So last night elections, really interesting. The U.S. presidential elections are next year, next November of 2024. Our congressional elections are also next year. This is a sort of an off-year election, and it's a couple different states had things going on. Pennsylvania had a number of elections going on for their Supreme Court and other things. Thank you, Triff. There was a governor's race in Kentucky. These are states of ours. A legislature race in the state of Virginia. Thank you, Alex, for the state legislature. And Ohio had a couple big initiatives. Well, basically, Democrats and the left won across the board. I mean, in a crazy way. Now, I'm going to give you some of the details because it is very interesting. And by the way, this is roundly, thank you, Tricia. This is roundly accepted as what happened. I mean, the Republican pundits say the same thing. This is not spin. The Democrats did well, and it was very surprising. Thank you, Marcy. A little bit of what? So Kentucky Democratic governor won re-election, but it's a very conservative state, a very pro-Trump state. Ohio. In Ohio, thank you, Pam, another conservative Republican state, although some people say it's not, and it's just because it's been gerrymandered. Basically, they tricked their way into sort of winning there. Thank you, Big Hawk. Ohio, but again, a Republican state, more or less. A marijuana resolution or whatever passed that legalized marijuana for recreational use among adults. Again, very interesting for a Republican state. The second thing, which was crazy, great, but crazy, this Republican state put the right to an abortion in the state constitution. I mean, I say crazy, not crazy. Thank you, Pam. Not crazy in a bad way, but crazy as in there's no way we thought this was going to happen in Ohio. I mean, some people obviously did. And then in Virginia, which is always kind of a bellwether for what's happening nationally, it just is the state legislature race. Democrats held on to the state Senate, which was a big success. And then there's a Republican governor, held on to the state Senate, and then the Democrats won the state House. It's called the House of Delegates in Virginia. They won it away from the Republicans. This was a big night for Democrats. I say surprising because, well, a couple things. Very often when one party holds the White House, Democrats write down. The other party does better in elections, last year, for example, we had our congressional elections. Republicans were supposed to do ridiculously well. They didn't. They were able to take the House of Representatives, but they only took it by a few votes. That's why they've been having so many problems, because their majority is so small. They were supposed to win it by like 40 votes. They won it by 4. I say 4 meaning seats, 40 seats. They won it by 4. In the it was in the Senate, the same thing. They did terrible in the Senate. The Republicans did. This was not supposed to happen. Biden was supposed to be really bad for Democrats. Well, this time around too, Biden was supposed to be bad for Democrats. I'll be done in a second, guys, but I figured it was a big story you guys would want to know. There was just a story a couple days ago. Thank you, Dark. There was a story just a couple days ago from the New York Times showing a new poll showing Biden doing very bad in 5 of 6 key states that he needs. And this was just a couple daand ago. And everybody was talking about, oh my God, do Democrats have to get rid of Biden? And clearly Biden is not affecting these races. And I'll go on with Israel next. But the main point to keep thinking is, clearly Biden did not have effect on these other races. The question is, will Biden have an effect on the presidential race, or will the presidential race become like these races where, for whatever reason, Democrats end up coming out to vote because they're worried about abortion and other issues, and Republicans that are in the middle or independents that are in the middle come out and vote for Democrats because, again, they're worried. I sort of, the way people were phrasing it last night was that a number of folks think it was a referendum on Trump, but a more general concept is a lot of voters are not happy with Democrats, but they fear the Republicans have gone kind of crazy, and that's what was happening with the voting last night. Thank you, A63, which gets interesting for presidential because who knows what's happened for presidential, right? But a big deal. I mean, this was very surprising. This should have been very bad for Democrats and good for Republicans, and it wasn't. That has everybody in Washington kind of going, whoa. Thank you, 863 Tom. So Israel, let's start talking about Israel and Gaza. As always, no big news. I mean, the fighting is still going on, folks. They're still fighting in Gaza. They're still fighting for Gaza City. There isn't any big news, but there's a lot of news around the edges. So I will fill you guys in. There were U.S. airstrikes in eastern Syria against Iranian Revolutionary Guard troops. Thank you, Becca. This was in response to some 40 attacks that Iranian surrogates have launched against U.S. military bases and U.S. forces in Syria and Iraq. So that happened today. There's a battle still going on inside Gaza City. As always, let me get my maps and I will show you guys the various maps. So just to sort of reiterate, thank you for the green eyes there, Becca. Israel is in yellow. Palestinian areas, West Bank, Gaza here. This is Jordan. This is Syria. This is Lebanon. This is Egypt. Gaza is down here. So this is the area the Israelis have invaded. Now, more specifically, this area is Gaza here, okay? Blue is Israel. This is Egypt. The Israelis have invaded. They've come across here to the coast, and they've invaded from the north, sort of northwest, northeast, which means they've pretty much encircled Gaza City, which is right here. The rest of Gaza is down here. Gaza City, I think, oh, thank you, Chad. Gaza City, I think we checked yesterday, has maybe 600,000 population. All of Gaza has maybe 2.3 million or so. So the Israelis have circled Gaza City. They reportedly have some troops already in Gaza City. There's some disagreement as to whether they've really reached the center of Gaza City or whether they are very slowly still moving in. The Israeli Defense Forces say that last night, the Hamas leader, Yahya, that's funny because that sounds Greek, like grandmother in Greek is Yahya Sinwar, was surrounded and isolated in his bunker. He's considered the chief orchestrator of the October 7th attacks in Israel and is Israel's most wanted man in the Gaza campaign. Now, I saw an interesting analysis today from Michael Clark, who those of you who follow our Ukraine coverage is a very smart defense expert in the UK. And thank you, Becca. He works with Sky News there. And he did a nice, thank you again, Becca. He did a very interesting analysis on kind of where things stand with the battle with Hamas. I just wanted to read you a little bit about it. He basically said he is not convinced that Hamas is throwing all they've got at the Israelis. He thinks Hamas is holding back and that it might be a bit of a trap for the Israelis. Listen to this. It isn't clear to me yet whether Hamas are really fighting this as hard as they can, Clark said. I have a feeling that only some of them are fighting and a lot of them have gone to the south and are just going to wait out events. Because remember, Israel is fighting in the north and has circled the area in the north. They could put up a much stiffer resistance than this if they wanted to, but for whatever reason, I think they don't want to, or they're trying to draw the Israelis into Gaza City and get them in there before they really show what they can do. But at the moment, I think Hamas are not fighting as hard as the Israelis expected them to, or in as high numbers as they expected them to. Interesting. Franklin was saying the same thing. Okay, Franklin was saying the same thing. At least 40,000 people have trekked from northern Gaza on foot to southern Gaza via some sort of, I don't know what they're calling them, evacuation corridors that the Israelis set up. They basically set up areas where citizens can, because the Israelis control now across Gaza, they've got it cut in half. They're opening up areas along that area of control for an hour, 2, 3, 4 hours. I think today might have been 4 hours. And thank you, Bonnie, and letting Gazans, Palestinians in Gaza, or Gazans overall, I guess, maybe not everybody's Palestinian, go south from there with the promise that obviously they're not going to bomb in that area that they're crossing. So about 40,000 have gone south there in the last few days. In terms of sort of the impact of the war overall, Palestinians, these are reports. All bakeries in northern Gaza have been forced to close due to shortages of vital supplies. This comes from a UN agency, which I trust a little bit more than I do Hamas. Reportedly, the bakeries are out of flour. Hospitals are also either increasingly shutting down or cutting down, at least back on their services, surgeries, things like that. The Rafah crossing in southern Gaza was closed today due to a security circumstance. No one can tell us what that actually is. Rafah is the border crossing down here that they were using to basically evacuate some Palestinians who needed medical attention, but not that many. It's like 100, 115. Thank you, G-Dub. But they were also using this to evacuate foreigners, people that were not Gazans, who were working, living, whatever in Gaza. And there's about 5,000 to 7,000 of them. And Hamas was not letting them leave. They were trying to basically use them as bargaining chips. And there have now been, I'd have to see the latest, maybe 1,200, 1,500 of them have been allowed to leave. Yesterday was the largest number, maybe 650 who were allowed to leave. But today that border crossing was closed again, and we don't quite know why. A little bit more. Hamas is still holding 239 hostages. These are the actual hostages. I mean, Hamas is not letting people leave Gaza. That's one thing. But they're also holding 239 people hostages that they took from Israel when they invaded on October 7th and slaughtered everybody. Negotiations between the U.S., Israel, and Qatar have supposedly reached a critical stage, but honestly, it's still kind of all over the place. They're talking about this humanitarian pause idea that the U.S. has been pushing. Thank you, Eva, and the Brits have been pushing as well, which would basically have a pause of either hours or days to let humanitarian aid come in, possibly let people get out, Palestinians, etc. Thank you. Who's that? Bonnie. Thank you, Bonnie. Appreciate that. And Becca for the rose. The pause would allow for the delivery of more humanitarian aid into Gaza and possibly the release of some hostages. Israeli officials have said Hamas must release all the hostages before they will agree to any ceasefire. Also, Hamas keeps bringing up the idea. Oh, Amy. Thank you, Amy. Hamas keeps bringing up the idea of Israel releasing some of the terrorists and others that that Israel has arrested. So it's kind of all over the place. One idea I saw thrown out there, but I just can't imagine. Thank you, Kyle. Why Israel would agree to this, but one idea, Hamas must have proposed this, that 10 to 15 hostages could be released and Israel would agree to like a 4-day ceasefire. The problem is there's 239 hostages. 10 or 15 doesn't really get you anywhere, So not really clear. Let's see if they go. This hostage thing, let's see. It's up in the air. Governance. Okay, so there's been a discussion going on the last couple of days about governance and basically who's going to run Gaza. Is it going to be Israel? The U.S. does not want Israel to be running Gaza. Israel itself probably should not want Israel to run Gaza. And U.S. Secretary of State first from a State Department official came out today and said that the U.S. believes that the Palestinian Authority is the appropriate place to look for governance eventually of the Gaza Strip. Secretary Blinken, who's our Secretary of State, added that the U.S. believes key elements of a peace deal should include no forcible displacement of Palestinians from Gaza, not now, not after the war, which was interesting, And Blinken also said today that it's clear that Israel cannot occupy Gaza, but there may be a need for some transition period at the end of the conflict, meaning that, and honestly, Bernie Sanders got upset about it today. I think Bernie is sort of feeling his oats a little bit because the liberals got mad at him. But Bernie tried to say today, no, there won't be any transition period of occupation, whatever. There has to be something. I mean, there has to be something. Basically, I don't know how Israel's going to do this otherwise. Israel's goal is to destroy Hamas, to take away their weapons and take them out of power. So far, nobody has proposed anything that's an alternative to that that Israel can do. That's a reasonable alternative. For Israel to do that, they've got to go through all of Gaza. They've got to get rid of these guys. And basically, somebody's got to take over, right? I mean, Israel's going to be in command of Gaza if they're occupying it, even if they're occupying it just to take out Hamas, right? Who's going to be running the government services if it was Hamas, right? So, I mean, that's an issue ongoing here. The issue becomes, if the war ends and we want the Palestinian Authority to take over, which is what the U.S. is saying, it still is going to take hopefully a short period of time for the Palestinian Authority people to come in and take over, for Israel to basically transfer responsibility. That's what the U.S. is saying. The U.S. is saying, we do not want Israel occupying. We do not want Israel running the government or running things there. But we understand that there may be a very short period of time between when the war ends and when the Palestinians could come in and take over. But that's the goal. The goal is from the U.S., at least, for the Palestinian Authority, which is running the parts of the West Bank that aren't occupied. They're running over there, and they're the basically sane people is the Palestinian Authority. Hamas are the terrorists. There was a poll of Gazans. I think this is the last thing I've got on Israel. I think it is, actually. There was a poll of Gazans done that was kind of interesting about Hamas. I figured, since we had talked about this the other day and we were asking if there were any polls, it's not a poll of very many people. It looked like it was like 330 Gazans or whatever. So it's not a huge poll. It's a local group in Gaza. Who knows if they're very good? Nonetheless, it's interesting. So, take it with a grain of salt. The poll showed nearly 44% of Gazans interviewed said they had no trust at all in Hamas's governing authority or in governance. 29% said they had not a lot of trust. So 29% had not a lot of trust in Hamas. 44% had no trust at all. That's interesting. That gets you to 73% that really don't have much. Thank you, Jonathan. That don't have much confidence in Hamas's governance. That's interesting. Nearly a third, 29% of the survey's respondents said they had either a great deal or quite a lot of trust. That's not much. In terms of the future, another part of the study included the thoughts of 790 Palestinians in the West Bank as well. And they were asked what a wider regional solution should be to the conflict with Israel, not just October 7th, but overall. 54% favored the two-state solution outlined in the 1993 Oslo Accords. Thank you, Kemi. Two-state solution basically meaning Israel gets to exist and gets this territory, and the Palestinians get to exist as a country, Palestine, and they get this territory. And Israel has to give up some of the territory its settlers have grabbed. The Palestinians have to give up some of their territory in the West Bank. There's a map. It's complicated as hell. But interesting that a little over half of Palestinians support that. That's not bad. That's not bad. In any case, so that's it for the Ukraine. That's it for the Israel stuff. Let me do a quick pitch for my work, and then we will continue with Ukraine. Just so you guys know, obviously, please do keep the gifts coming. The gifts you guys give me on TikTok and on YouTube and the super chats and super stickers help support my work. Thank you, Maggie. I do this full time, and I'm able to do it with your guys' gifts. Basically, your gifts pay my bills. So thank you for that. Please do keep them coming. Thank you, Elizabeth. And I'll always try to do a shout out when I see them. So thank you. You can also sign up for Ko-fi and some of the other services for monthly subscriptions on TikTok and YouTube and Ko-fi, Discord, Twitch. All of them have ways of signing up monthly. Ko-fi is one that a lot of folks use. You can check it out. The link in my bio. Thank you, Timothy. The link in my bio on TikTok. It's ko-fi.com/Aravosis. My last name. Thank you, Ellie. You guys can find the Ko-fi link there at the bottom of the screen. Actually, I'll pull this up so you can see it. There we go. Thank you, Aflac. Triff for the Aflac duck. Appreciate that. So let's talk about Ukraine. Another sip of water or tea, and then Ukraine. So today is day 622 of Vladimir Putin's special 3-day military operation in Ukraine. Rather significant development today. Russia attacked a Liberian-flagged ship that was heading into port in Odessa. There are some conflicting reports as to whether it was heading into port or whether it was already in port and picking up iron or iron ore, thank you, killers, that it was planning to ship to China. So, interestingly enough, the initial reports are that this ship was transporting goods to China that the Chinese had bought. The Russians shot up the ship. They attacked it with a missile, I believe. Thank you, Bonnie. They killed one person, either on the ship or in the Port Authority, injured 4 others. The 4 others supposedly Liberia. The 4 others that were injured are Filipino, I believe. What's interesting about this is an okay. How we always use the term escalation. This is a real escalation. This is an escalation. Up until now, the Russians have been threatening to attack shipping. They haven't really attacked shipping, commercial shipping. This was a commercial ship. They attacked it. They killed people. The Russians are doing this. The whole idea here, let me get my little map. The whole idea here is to convince foreign countries not to do business with Ukraine, that it's not safe, right? You don't want to send your ships in there because they're going to get blown up. So here's Odessa. It was either at the port of Odessa or near here. Now, typically, actually, I've got all my different maps here. I've got my map sitting under. If I can't find this one easily, I'll do. Forget it. I'll do it later. I'm not going to worry about it right now. But typically, the ships would come in and out of there. They'd go around the Black Sea, and then they would cut through Turkey. There's an isthmus around Turkey that you cut through, and then you end up in the Aegean by Greece, the Mediterranean, etc. Thank you, Zach. Oh, that's a very cool gift, Zach. Thank you for that. By the Aegean, by Greece, etc. The Russians want to basically send a missile to every commercial ship that it's not safe. That if you attack, they will attack if you do any business with Ukraine. This will send a message to every other ship that it's not safe going into Ukraine, right? It's going to also possibly make insurance rates go through the roof for ships going to Ukraine. Russia did this to shut down all commercial shipping to Ukraine. If you're Ukraine, you kind of want to do the same thing back to the Russians. Thank you, Elizabeth. This is a war crime. You're not allowed to shoot up commercial shipping. The Russians don't care about war crimes, as we've seen from the beginning. This puts Ukraine in a very interesting spot because there is an argument that Ukraine should respond by shooting up commercial ships going to Russia, because you got a lot of Russian ports in that same sea, in the same area. You've got Russian ports. And if Ukraine were to shoot up some commercial ships in the area going to Russia, nobody's doing business with Russia either if that were to happen. The problem is, as Kelly just said, it does violate international law. It would be a war crime. But it also would shut down trade with Russia. And if you're Ukraine and you're worried about not getting your country back, it starts to become an interesting debate. I mean, this is the problem with war crimes discussions. And it is across the board. You kind of have to balance how much of a war crime is it? And I'm quite serious. What if you could sink a commercial ship without killing anybody, right? That would be a war crime, but is it really the same kind of war crime as sinking a commercial ship and killing everybody on board? All the civilians? I mean, right? Would that not be a bigger war crime? Do you know what I mean? In terms of the morality of it, it is far more moral to sink a ship with no one on it than to sink it with a full crew and kill the crew, right? So, I mean, let's see what Ukraine does. My suspicion is Ukraine very much wants to hit Russian shipping going into Russia. The problem is, I guarantee you, the U.S. has told them, don't do it. Don't do it. And with this attack today, the U.S. is back on the phone to Ukraine going, don't do it. If you're Ukraine, I'm not sure what you do about this, because I don't think the Ukrainians can let the Russians get away with this. And Russia's got a lot of business going on that they're getting. I don't know. All I'm saying is this is very interesting. It's very interesting. As far as what happens next from this. So thank you. Oh, that's very cool, Elizabeth. Thank you for that. I don't remember the raining gifts gift before. That's very cool. Thank you. So anyway, that's kind of a big story. Let's see if anything happens with it, but that's kind of a big story. More news. Oh, this is interesting. So this is actually some good news. So one of the things we like to look at is Russian military bloggers who are basically Russians, private citizens, often former military, and they comment on how the war is going. Now, Putin put a real chill on them by arresting a couple of them because they were being too negative. And remember, it's illegal in Russia to I forget the word. It's not disparage the military. I think there's some word like disparage or something where basically you're charged with, if you criticize the military, you're charged with spreading false information because, of course, the military is great, right? Well, the military, but so keeping that in mind, the fact that the military bloggers are once again worried publicly when they know it's risky to be worried publicly, it just adds a little more to the truth of this. So listen to this. The Institute for the Study of War, which is that really good defense think tank here in Washington, D.C. that I like to cite, said today or last night, actually, that a Russian military blogger who is typically optimistic about Russian capabilities expressed a relatively pessimistic assessment of the war. He claimed Ukraine is committed to an exhausting war against Russia and that Russia will be forced to fight and lose people. Now, first of all, I'm going to keep reading this. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Chad. Oh, thank you for the gay bear, Chad. What's interesting, first of all, I'm going to read you more of this, but what's interesting, first of all, this Russian military blogger is worried that the Ukrainians are in this for the long haul and that Russia maybe can't afford to do this for the long haul because they'd be forced to fight and lose people. This is the same thing people on our side are worried about, right? Usually you hear it from our side. Oh, Putin, the Russians can do this forever, right? Can Ukraine do this forever? The West is going to pull up. Well, on the Russian side, they're just as freaked out about how long they can keep doing this. And they're freaked out thinking the Ukrainians will never stop. Those crazy Ukrainians, right? Thank you, Andre. I have to make sure Vlad sees this too, because it's very positive, actually, this kind of spin coming from the Russians. Moscow's forces need, quote, enormous combat potential and an accurate calculation of their capabilities to beat Ukraine, he said. The blogger also said Russia needs to put its entire economy on a war-fit footing in order to win. Thank you, Alexandra. Again, it's a tidbit, but it's very interesting that on their side, some of their experts are kind of freaking out right now. That's good. That's very good. Ukraine. So Ukraine appears to have put more troops south of the Dnipro River over here in Kherson. So Kherson is the region. It's also the town of Kherson right here. And you'll recall that the Russians control south of the river, all of this. And then when you get into this area south of the river, Ukrainians north of the river, little pocket of Ukrainians south of the river fighting. And the Ukrainians are starting to pour more troops in here. Now, supposedly it's not enough troops to make a huge difference yet, people think. But it is enough to start worrying the Russians. And basically, the idea we think of what the Ukrainians are doing is they're putting more and more troops in that area to basically force the Russians to say, oh, shit. Now we have to start paying attention to this area. So the Russians start moving troops from here, over here, because they worry that if they avoid this, here's the thing. Maybe the Ukrainians are planning on putting lots of troops here. Maybe this is going to be the big Ukrainian counteroffensive. Maybe they've got more troops. Who knows, right? Thank you, Cheryl. But the idea is if Ukraine were to do a big offensive here, that puts them right within striking distance of Crimea. That's a big deal. That's a big deal for the Russians. So that's what they're worried about with Ukraine doing this. So Ukraine might be doing a little bit of a feint, a little bit of a trick to Russia, but it's also a trick the Russians can't afford to ignore. So it's a good move to make the Russians have to basically spend some men that they'd rather be using fighting Ukraine elsewhere. A little more here. Good news from the European Union today, although today's news is a recommendation. It's nothing written in law. Some of the Europeans may have to explain to us more what this means, but basically, Ukraine wants to join the European Union. They got an initial recommendation today from the European Commission that recommended the EU continue or proceed with figuring out a plan, I guess, for Ukraine to join the EU. I mean, I've got the specific language, but honestly, who knows what the hell this means, right? The commission recommended that membership talks with Ukraine formally begin pending several remaining legislative changes. So this is good. Jordan is correct. Georgia got the recommendation too, as well as did Moldova. Moldova also got the recommendation, which is great. Now, one thing to be reminded of is a couple different things, actually. For this, now this was one interesting thing I read. For this to proceed, it has to, the decision has to be endorsed by the leaders of the European Union's 27 member states, including who? Hungary. Hungary that hates Ukraine and loves Putin. So that could be a problem. Let's see what Hungary does, because Putin really doesn't want Ukraine joining the EU. The other thing to keep in mind is, Turkey has been in this status that Ukraine's just getting right now. Turkey's been in this status since like 2005. Thank you, Courtney. Now, there's good reasons Turkey's membership to the EU hasn't gone anywhere. First of all, because of the invasion of Northern Cyprus and occupation of Northern Cyprus. But second of all, because Turkey has been slipping up on being a democracy, which doesn't go over terribly well with the European Union either. But the point there is that just because you begin these talks or whatever doesn't mean you're on a path to anytime soon. Where Turkey, it's been 18 years and it's not going anywhere. Now, like I said, in Turkey's case, they deserve it, but still, right? Still, it's good news. It's better than the alternative. Ukraine's energy infrastructure has been attacked 60 times in recent weeks. That's interesting because, as we've talked about, Zelensky has said multiple times that if the Russians attack Ukraine's energy again this winter, Ukraine will retaliate against Russia's energy. That's interesting. Thank you, Cheryl. We have not seen any indication of that yet, but that's, again, whether Ukraine starts having to go after more civilian infrastructure in Russia is this larger issue we're starting to see raise its head. The Ukrainians blew up a Russian proxy leader, a Ukrainian turncoat in Luhansk in eastern Ukraine, occupied by the Russians. He was a Russian protege, basically picked by the Russians to help run the region. They put a bomb in his car and blew him up. They do this a lot. The Ukrainians, I say the Ukrainians are becoming the Mossad of whatever you call that region of Europe, of Eastern Europe. They're getting very adept at blowing up car bombs, and it's usually car bombs of some kind against basically collaborators. The U.S. has gone through 96% of the funds that it has available for Ukraine, that's allocated. In other words, we've only got another 4% left, and then we got nothing else to give them unless Congress acts, according to the White House today. German arms manufacturer Rheinmetall received an order from the German government to provide Ukraine with about 100,000 rounds of mortar ammunition. Slovakia's newly appointed government rejected a 40 million euro or $43 million military aid package that the earlier government had proposed. But remember, the new Slovakian government is anti-Ukraine and pro-Putin, so he killed the deal. Britain's Ministry of Defense says that the Russians are still dealing with attacks on their railways. Remember at the beginning of the war, there were people in Russia that were basically civilians damaging the Russian railways. And they think it was Russian citizens who didn't like the war in Ukraine. And apparently it's still going on. As of last month, October, there were 76 cases of railway sabotage had reached the Russian courts. The Ministry of Defense, the British Ministry of Defense, said it's a big deal because Russian military logistics remain reliant on the country's train network. That's how Russia's getting stuff to Ukraine. So if the train tracks are being blown up, it could really cause the Russians a lot of problem for resupplying. Finally, classic Russian. Two final things. Russians put one of the remaining International Criminal Court judges that did the arrest warrant for Putin because of Putin's war crimes in Ukraine, because Putin was involved in stealing the Ukrainian children and kidnapping them and taking them to Russia. The Russians added another judge from the International Criminal Court to their most wanted list and issued an arrest warrant for the judge because the judge dared issue an arrest warrant for Putin. I mean, this is the kind of crazy rule of law problem you've got in Russia, that literally it's a crime to accuse a Russian of a crime. I mean, this is the kind of wacky stuff they do. And finally, there was a really cute quote from Zelensky today. He was speaking to Reuters, And he said, sometimes I'm looking at all of these wars, he means around the world, or looking at all of these crises, the Middle East crisis. It's not only Ukraine. He's saying the crisis isn't just Ukraine, it's everywhere in Africa and the Middle East. And he says, sometimes I'm looking at this and I think that the best way is if the planet was if the planet will be the planet of dogs. Basically saying he thinks sometimes maybe we'd be better off if dogs ran the planet and if we were just a planet of dogs, which I thought was very funny. Thank you, 6Evo, for the question. What do you got here? Can the ship incident lead to a larger conflict? Yeah, because first of all, the Ukrainians can blow up a commercial ship going to Russia instead and see how the Russians feel about that. So it can. Yeah. You also could have NATO or somebody want to step in. The problem is, NATO's not going to step in. It wasn't in NATO waters and it wasn't a NATO vessel. It was a vessel from Liberia. Is Liberia going to get involved? Philippines? Philippines probably isn't very happy that the Russians just shot at 4 of their people, but yeah, it could. It could. Yeah, it absolutely could. All right. Yeah, we could do Q&A. Our auctions are just ending, so I don't think there may be like one auction item left. I'm not going to show you, but I will hopefully put up some new auction items tomorrow. Saturday, I am flying out to Chicago again for the next couple months. Going to visit mom again. So I will be in the home office of the wood paneling office. We will be at starting next week. So what was I going to say? Oh yeah. So I may hope, hey Gabe, thank you for that. I'm going to try to get the next auction up tomorrow or Friday. Let's see. Cause my bigger, get a better mic, get a better attitude, John, get a better mic. Maybe you shouldn't be coming to TikTok expecting high quality audio is the problem. If you go to other services, you can listen to my $500 mic. Snotty man. Mods, feel free to get rid of that person, by the way. In any case, let's do questions, guys. Thank you, user. Let's do questions. Either Ukraine or Israel, of course, or Israel-Gaza. You are not going to meet mom's nurse. No. No. Interesting idea, but no. What else we got? No, Slava, actually, it's about people being rude and people that come here to be rude, basically, rather than and trying to interrupt everybody else who's kind of listening. So, like I said, it's about overall rudeness and people who come here just to be jerks. And we're all kind of here to get the news and talk and share information. And when people come here just to be assholes, it's really inappropriate and they shouldn't be here. So, correct. Yeah, no, you shouldn't. Seriously, you just don't go on people's shows and it's just rude, So what else is going on, guys? Let's talk questions and answers and everything else. Beep, beep, beep. Anybody? Any questions? Any comments? What do you think? Ron, why does it seem like Israel is in the minority that they did wrong? I think what Ron means is, why does it seem like everybody is disagreeing with Israel on this war? Well, there's multiple possibilities. One, maybe Israel is wrong, right? Then the world's very upset with them, a lot of the world. Two, maybe the world hates Israel and doesn't like Jews. That is true. It's true. Now, I'm not yet saying fully that that's what's going on here, but there's a hell of a lot of anti-Semitism in the world. Like in the United Nations, a lot of United Nations countries can't stand Israel and they freaking hate Jews. Anti-Semitism alive and well in much of the world. It's alive and well in my country. It's even worse in a lot of other countries. So that's a problem. Some countries, it's legit. Because let's face it, there's a lot of civilians dying in Palestine, in Gaza, right? So, it's not, my point here is, it's not crazy to be concerned about what Israel's doing, right? I think that personally, that a lot of folks who are concerned about what Israel is doing aren't nearly as concerned about what was done to Israel and what Israel can do and should do in response. I think they only think of the Palestinians and they don't think of, well, then what should Israel do? And actually, Blinken mentioned that again today. And he kind of said, everyone is criticizing Israel. What do you propose they do? And simply saying surrender isn't an answer. You have a government that was attacked. 1,400 people were killed and not just murdered, brutally murdered. What are you going to do in response? And they're using human shields. They're using citizens to shield themselves. What's the solution? And yes, the solution is an overall peace settlement. I'm agreeing with you on that. But that doesn't solve the immediate problem of what does Israel do when they've got a terrorist organization on their doorstep running the country next door, territory, whatever you want to call it, but it's a country in essence, next door. They run it, and they're a terrorist group that just got interviewed and said, we're going to do this 4 or 5 times, he said, what they did on October 7th. He said, we're going to keep doing it. What do you do? You know? And don't give me any bullshit stuff about it didn't start on October 7th. That wasn't the question, because we can get into an argument of who started it, and you're never going to get a clear answer. The question is, you get invaded and somebody kills 1,400 of your people, which in U.S. terms would be 40,000 people. What do? You don't sit there and go, bygones. You don't. You have to respond. You have to take them out. Special forces. I mean, Caitlin says special forces. Yes, but that's what they're doing. They're getting their forces in there. But these guys are living in tunnels underneath civilians. You have to drop bombs on them to knock out the tunnels. But to knock out the bombs, you've got civilian infrastructure on top because they intentionally picked under civilian buildings. That's what I'm saying. I don't know the answer to this, because I don't like the idea of having to bomb civilian buildings, because the terrorist government of Gaza is literally intentionally building their headquarters under civilians. But what else do you do if you're the people next door who they keep saying, we just murdered you and we're going to murder you again? I literally don't know what the answer is. I really don't. It's a mess. I'm not concerned about the entire Muslim world united against Israel. They already are, and they already have been. I mean, first of all, it depends what you mean. Some of the governments are more, Jordan's government is level-headed. Saudi Arabia's government is being level-headed. Lebanon's actual government is level-headed. The idiots in the South are crazy. The terrorists in the South. But the U.S. will defend Israel. And I think the Arab governments know that. I mean, what Arab government's going to want to invade Israel right now? Jordan doesn't. Egypt doesn't. Hezbollah in southern Lebanon does. Lebanon itself doesn't. Assad in Syria, does he really want to invade? I mean, maybe, but Iran? Right? I'm not convinced the Arab governments would want to invade. Now, the Arab governments could get together and do an Arab embargo. That's possible. Arab embargo, an oil embargo. That's certainly possible. So that would be bad. Zach had a super chat question. Can you talk a bit about the fraying relationship between Russia and Israel? It seemed to happen quickly. I mean, we don't yet know how much the relationship is frayed or not. Putin, I was just reading about this the other day. Putin has been trying to walk a fine line between Iran and Israel. He reportedly has had a very good relationship with Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel. They hit it off really well. There's some kind of personal connection the two have, that they just on a personal level have really enjoyed each other, and dealing with each other, right? On the other hand, Russia super friends with Iran, because Iran is helping Russia not fall on its face in Ukraine by giving them weapons and drones and maybe some missiles and other stuff, right? So Russia has been kind of playing this weird in between. And up until now, as long as Iran wasn't attacking Israel, right, Russia could play both sides. Well, now you've got Hamas, which is, funded by Iran, weapons by Iran, attacking Israel. You've got Hezbollah in the north kind of beginning to attack Israel, but not making a huge attack yet, funded by Iran, sponsored by Iran. It starts to get a little dicey for Russia. And you then get the fact that the attacks on Jews in Russia, this story out of France that their investigators are still trying to figure it out. But I read a story in Le Monde today, and Le Monde was saying that, which is a big French paper, was saying that it seems pretty clear this was directed by somebody basically with a they even knew the name of the group, with a pro-Russian group, a group that pro-Russian group, meaning a group working for the Russian government, of course, that they were the ones behind painting all the swastikas in Paris on not swastikas, painting all the stars of David on Jewish businesses and Jewish homes, that it looks like it was a Russian operation. Thank you, Maxime. If that's the case, that's not great for Russia. So, Russia, you already had a problem with Russia trying to be friends with both sides, Iran and Israel, who, are at war or practically at war. Now you've got war breaking out in the Middle East, so it's even riskier. And you've got Russia playing games. You've got Russia potentially being involved with promoting anti-Semitism in Europe, attacking Jews, etc. That it gets interesting. So I don't know, but I don't know that their relationship is fraying. I'm not sure it's fraying yet. I suspect it's a little tense right now, but Israel also gets beneficial things out of the relationship or they wouldn't have it. Russia controls Syria. Israel worries about the groups in Syria. I read the other day that Israel and Russia share some intelligence about what's going on in Syria. So, there's an advantage for Israel as well here. So the question becomes, when does the bad stuff outweigh the good stuff? Whatever reason they had to try to, for example, Israel not being very helpful to Ukraine because they wanted to preserve that relationship with Russia. Will this relationship with Russia get to the point where Israel says, screw you, we're going to start helping Ukraine more, which we haven't been doing until now, right? Maybe. So that is my very long answer. What else, guys? What else? Do I condemn Israel for war crimes? It depends which war crime. I'm still not 100% convinced about the war crimes. I think the ambulance thing might be, in part because I was reading today that if you believe the other guys are using ambulances to transport, terrorists or whatever, you've got to give them notice to stop. Now, nonetheless, technically, if they didn't give notice, it would be a war crime. But on the other stuff, depends, guys, because it depends who you're attacking. And I mean, it depends on the attack. It would depend on the attack. It's possible. Yeah, but killing children and women isn't, you've got to, part of it is intending. You've got to intend to kill women and children, right? So for example, Russia in Ukraine from the beginning, Russia's strategy in Ukraine from the beginning has been to kill civilians on purpose. And that is part of Russia's war. They did it in Syria too. It's part of Russia's war strategy is to kill civilians on purpose, right? That's what they do because they think they're putting pressure on the government and this kind of thing. If you kill civilians on purpose because you say, this is great, let's kill civilians because we can put pressure on the country to cave, that's a war crime. Yes. If you kill civilians by accident, not necessarily. If you kill civilians as part of a military attack on a military target, maybe a war crime, may not be. I say may not be because you've still got to be reasonable in your attack, right? You can't say, well, I don't even know what the law would be on this, but I would imagine you can't say, well, we could kill one Hamas guy and it will kill 1,000 children, but we really would like to kill the one Hamas guy. So let's kill the 1,000 children with the bomb because it's 1,000 children in a building above him. I think you might have a problem with war crimes there. Yes. But you've got to get into that analysis. Women and children dying is not a sufficient reason to say there's a war crime. The law, it always looks at motivation and it looks at reasonableness. So motivation, are you trying to kill women and children? And again, maybe you could argue Israel is trying to kill women and children. I don't know, right? But if you can prove that, then you got a war crime. But it's not just because women and children have died or even they've died in large numbers, because they do in wars. A lot of them, a lot of people are going to die. That's what sadly happens. Sixiva was saying, I mentioned that the ship incident can lead to a larger conflict, but in your opinion, should we be worried? Well, I always tell you to never be worried. Well, unless you're a ship captain in the Black Sea, you should not be worried. No. You should never be worried. What's going to happen to you? You know what I mean? Like, if nothing's happening to you. Putin going to Dagestan? I didn't see that. That's interesting. So Putin is going to the region that had all the anti-Jewish riots, the mob that went through the airport looking for the plane from Israel and that kind of crazy stuff. I didn't know Putin was visiting. Interesting that he's visiting though. That's Kadyrov, it's the Chechens, it's all of that. So it may be unrelated, but it may also be that he's worried about, he's a little worried about things being kind of out of control there. It's possible. That's interesting, though. I don't know, but I don't know whether it's related to sort of the Jewish thing or whether it's related just to Kadyrov and the, actually, Ash, explain to them what the problem is when you guys tell them not to spam, because I don't think people necessarily understand what we mean by that. So meaning you're free to put up Palestinian flags. Don't just put up every post of Palestinian flags over and over and over again. That would be spamming. Yeah. So once or twice is fine. Don't keep doing it over and over. Same thing with Israeli flags and everything else. Yeah. So posting the same thing multiple times in a row. Bingo. That we don't like. Exactly. I just think to give them a little more so they know exactly what we're complaining about. That we may do. Well, I mean, Fred says we know civilian casualties have been 8,000 to 10,000. We don't know that, actually. We know there have been a lot of civilian casualties because it's obvious, right? I mean, we've seen video, we've seen pictures. We know of people who have lost family members, the famous Palestinian journalist, right? So we know there have been significant civilian casualties. We do not know, unless you've been counting dead bodies in person, we do not know how many bodies. It's still coming from the Palestinians and Gaza, and I don't believe them. I mean, they lied about the hospital. What else are they lying about? They lied about the hospital attack, claimed Israel did it, and claimed 700 people were dead. In fact, the U.S. intelligence says probably more like 150 people dead, and it wasn't the Israelis. Nearly all the experts now say, thank you, Kronos, that it was Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Is Hamas, for example, still counting the 700 dead at the hospital who are not 700, they're actually 150? Are they counting that to the dead that Israel killed? Does that 10,000 include the 700 that they lied about? That A, the number is a lie, but also saying Israel did it is a lie? That's my concern about trusting the Hamas numbers. How many other attacks do they have in that number that are attacks that Israel didn't do, that Hamas is claiming Israel did, and also they're lying about the number of dead anyway? Having said that, you can't deny, thank you, Janice, you can't deny that there's a lot of civilian deaths. You can't. I just quibble about the numbers, but there's a lot of civilian deaths. So, I mean, I'm not going to argue with that, obviously. Thank you, Kronos. Chris, but how many Hamas militants have been killed? Anybody, the Israeli folks or anybody else following this, have they given any numbers? They've said a lot, and they've talked about numbers of attacks. Have they given numbers? I mean, why is saying 60. I don't remember if they've given actual numbers. Part of it is they may not know. Jen Cooper saying they don't know. They may not, because they're trying to collapse. Right now, they're trying to collapse the tunnels. They've been trying to collapse the tunnels. Cute, just for fun. You almost got me. Anyway. I don't know. Iron Dome low on ammo. I mean, I know part of the U.S. aid is to provide more ammunition for the Iron Dome, which is the system the Israelis use to shoot down the incoming missiles, or at least shoots down a lot of the incoming missiles. Are the hostages in the tunnels? Probably. Thank you, Michael. I don't know if we know. If we do know, we're not going to say publicly, obviously. But the supposition was that they were going to hide the hostages in the tunnels. Yes, that was because again, they're using these guys. A, they don't want people to find them. And B, they want the hostages with them. They want the hostages killed if they're killed. That's the whole point. They're doing this. They're doing this they attacked Israel just for starters, hoping Israel would attack the Palestinians in response in Gaza. Ukraine update. I just did the last 40 minutes of Ukraine update. Where were you? Victor, you must be new here. The last 30, 40 minutes was all about Ukraine. Now we're just doing questions and answers. So what ammo? I don't know what ammo the Iron Dome uses. Anybody? We do the recap at the end, Webb or Deb, if we do it. What ammunition does the Iron Dome use? Like what kind of rocket or whatever is it? Anybody know? Just curious. Expensive rockets. They are expensive, actually. They are expensive, though, from what I read. They weren't cheap. Well, the new one is laser, yes, but these are rockets. Yeah. But I remember seeing that they were expensive. Yeah. No, people must know. I mean, I'm sure somebody knows. Mustard says $40,000 each. They're called Tamir. Okay. They're called Tamir. Oh, hey, Nina. Okay. 40 to 80,000 each. I remember them not being cheap. Yeah. But I also thought I read that they're not necessarily hard to make. The video of the Hamas attack in that hospital, I don't know what you mean. The video of the Hamas attack in that hospital that we supposedly destroyed. I don't know about any video. I assume you're talking about the hospital that they claimed you guys destroyed, and most of the experts say it was Islamic Jihad now. But I don't know. So I do not know about a video. Would I rather have Americans fighting the Russians? God, no. That's one of the reasons I support helping the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are fighting the Russians for us. And I think it's important anyway. Thank you, Kronos. I think the Ukrainians are doing God's work, and it's important, and I want to defend Ukraine. But also, if you just want to be selfish about it, the Ukrainians are destroying the Russian military for us. I mean, I can Google too if there's a video. I mean, what does it show overall? What's the video? I can always kind of check out, see what it was. Yeah, Nina, so what is actually in the video? Now that is an interesting point. I mean, the Israelis are saying that these hospitals were supposed to run out of fuel weeks ago and they're still operating. So they've been a little suspicious of the claim that the hospitals are running out of fuel. I will say, the UN claims it. I don't trust the UN as far as I can throw it, because the UN, I worked there. They're horrible people, but so who knows? But who do I support? It's a little difficult. First of all, with regards to what? I mean, right? I mean, I believe that. Look, I think the Palestinians have been screwed all these years, and I think people have been trying to kill Jews for several thousand years. So I think both sides have a legitimate grievance, and both sides are oppressed, and both sides continue to be oppressed. I mean, the one good thing the Palestinians have going for them, the world doesn't hate Palestinians. The world hates Jews, and they still do. And they still hate Israel. They've always hated Israel. Having said that, that's about the only thing the Palestinians have going for them, because they're living in camps. They don't have a country. Even the Arab governments, I think, mistreat them. The Arab governments pretend to care, and they don't care. They just like to rally their people sometimes for like 2 minutes hate, just to let the hate out. But, yeah. So, I try to make sure I keep my sympathy for the Palestinians, because I think they've been effed from the beginning. But I do not buy the argument that Israel did it to them, or that the Jews, even worse, making it about Jews, which is just anti-Semitic. That's like saying all Arabs are all Muslims. But honestly, both sides have had lots of deaths and lots of nasty things done. Thank you, Florian. So, I wish they had agreed to something previously, like the 2 states or whatever. Although the 2 states, the problem is, if there were a 2-state solution, actually, there's an interesting question. I don't know. We're not going to solve this here. Had, the Israelis and the Palestinians agreed way back when, right? During the Clinton era, 20 plus years ago with Yasser Arafat. Thank you, Ernie. Had the Israelis and the Palestinians agreed, 24 years ago, whenever it was, to 2 states, Israel and a Palestinian state, would that have stopped somebody like Hamas from taking over? Thank you, Livestar. Or Lori. I'm calling you Livestar. Thank you, Lori. Right? I mean, I just sort of hit me right now, but could we have not been in the same situation anyway? Thank you, Hedge. Could we not have been in the same situation? Thank you, Elizabeth. That Hamas would still take over. They'd get a radical government taking over and, would do the same kind of crap. I mean, Hamas was elected in the parliament or whatever originally. Yeah. But I mean, now this is a concern that Israelis would have, that, and I mean, I've seen some of them say that you're going to create a Palestinian state and all it's going to do is become a Palestinian terrorist state. Right now, I hopefully there's be something in place. I don't know what it would be to stop that from happening, but I mean, I guess actually here's the real question. I guess what my question really is that if 2 states were created, would that be enough to make the war go away? Would Hamas and Islamic Jihad and Hezbollah stop attacking Israel if a Palestinian state was created and the Palestinians agreed to the state? Would that stop everybody from attacking them? Because if not, it's going to happen all over again. That's I mean, a lot of people are saying, no, that's the concern, And so you'd have a Palestinian state. It would be part of it might be run by Hamas, and they'd attack Israel, and Israel would invade and try to take them out. I mean, that's what worries me with, again, it's funny. I don't know that a Palestinian state makes it any worse, but I worry that a Palestinian state might not make it any better, right? But I don't know that it makes it worse, but it may not make it better, which worries me. Yeah. Anyway, this issue sucks. I mean, it really does, though. It's just it's a shitty issue, I mean, yeah, I'm no fan of the Israeli settlements in the West Bank, not at all. I think the Israeli settlers there are crazy, and Netanyahu's just as bad, and he sucks up to them. And I'm no fan of him and no fan of them. No. I mean, at least from what I've known about them, they seem like assholes. I mean, basically. So don't disagree with you on that one. A 3-state solution. I don't even know what that would be. Who's the third state? Kelly's saying a 3-state solution. Somebody who talked about. I don't know what that would be. Well, that's the problem. How do you split it? I mean, you've seen the maps. The maps are horrible. I mean, the maps are insane that they've drawn of all the little territories that each country gets. And it's just, oh my God, it's just crazy. Absolutely crazy. Anyway. What else, guys? Happy to talk Ukraine too. We don't just have to talk Israel and Gaza and Palestinians. Well, I mean, Gunther, there was the one poll, Gunther was asking what do everyday Palestinians want. I mean, the one poll I was mentioning, if it's a good poll, said nearly over half of Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza want 2 states, which is it. Now it's half, hopefully you'd get more than that if it looked like it was realistic. Does Israel help Ukraine? Not very much. Not that we know of. No. I mean, the Ukrainians, but not that we know, not really. The Ukrainians wanted Iron Dome and a lot of help from Israel. Israel said no. Israel's not been sending weapons of any kind. Israel even said no about, thank you, Super Hornet. What was it that Israel had that were it was U.S. stocks that I think the U.S. even paid for that were in Israel, and we wanted to remove them and give them to Ukraine, and Israel said no. So Israel has been understandably feeling it important to suck up to the Russians because of Syria, but it's still pretty shitty. And I've criticized it before, because it's very realpolitik, but it's also really shitty, I forget what it was that we've got in Israel. It might've been artillery shells. I don't remember what it is. It might be the artillery shells that we position abroad. I don't know. I don't remember. If anybody else remembers. Stooge is saying if Israel helped Ukraine, it was most likely intelligence. That's my guess, because the intelligence stuff is harder to track, right? Whereas weapons or defensive stuff you might see, Dadar, all right, have a good night. Ben Gurion Canal Project, is that the little conspiracy theory, Han? I didn't know about this. A friend was telling me about this weekend. There's a conspiracy theory that Israel wants Gaza because they're going to build a canal going through Gaza that's going to replicate the Suez Canal and this kind of stuff. And I was like, well, why wouldn't they just do it north? Like, basically, the idea, you'd have to see a larger map of the Middle East, right? But Israel connects to the Red Sea here. It goes down and then comes back up, and you have the Red Sea. Oh, actually, right here, you can see the Red Sea comes up here. This is here on the map. This little point here is this water comes down around Saudi Arabia, everybody, and then not Saudi Arabia, comes around, what is it, Yemen or whatever? Not Yemen. I'm getting screwed up, but you get what I mean. And then you come up the Red Sea here, and you'd come up across. Well, if you could cross, actually, I'm totally pointing to the wrong place on the map. Ignore the water here. Let's just look here. Bottom line is it comes down here and comes back here. If you could cross a canal from here to here, you could get through Israel and not have to go through Egypt to cross the Red Sea, to cross from the Mediterranean to the Red Sea and down here. Supposedly, the conspiracy theory is, Israel wants Gaza so they can build the canal here. Well, why don't they just build the canal here, the land they've already got, and then come down? What's the difference? I know the map is too shiny, but bottom line is Gaza isn't that big. If Israel wanted to build a canal, they could just do it a couple miles north, couldn't they? I mean, Also, did Israel convince Hamas to invade Israel on October 7th and kill 1,400 people so that Israel could then invade Gaza so they could build a canal? I mean, those Jews are really good if they did that. I mean, damn, they're good. So yeah, I mean, it's silly. But yes, I only learned of that this weekend, and I was asking the same question. I was like, why don't the Israelis just build it above? And my friend was like, exactly. So, well, conspiracy theories, conspiracy theories are conspiracy theories, I mean, oh boy. I mean, well, there is the argument. I mean, it is a theory that Netanyahu, because it depends who you talk to in Israel, that Netanyahu was sort of happy to have Hamas because they sort of kept things radical so that he could say, oh, those Palestinians, they're crazy. We can't negotiate with them. But who knows? I know I'm making you yawn. Sorry about that. Israel's occupying Palestinian territory. Well, if you mean the West Bank, but, when they gave up Gaza 18 years ago, parts of the West Bank, depends where. Also, let's not forget why Israel was occupying any Palestinian territory, because y'all tried to wipe them out and you lost. And Israel got land as a result, which is what happens when you invade somebody and you lose. The other guy gets some land from you. Talk to Strasbourg, France about that. So, I mean, people don't like to discuss that. Israel has not been occupying their territory. Israel's been occupying their own territory from 3,000. That is correct, from 3,000 years ago. I mean, right. That's why I'm not a big fan of who was there first, because I told you guys this before. It's the same BS you get into with people who talk about gentrification. Oh, this neighborhood was traditionally, pink people 30 years ago. And I'm like, okay. And who was it 60 years ago? And who was it 90 years ago? Like, why is it only your favorite group gets to inhabit this neighborhood, but my favorite group doesn't? It's bullshit. You've got to look at the circumstances, and you've got to look at I mean, again, is it justified? Is it not justified? But just to say we were there first, I think is stupid. And by the way, there was an Israeli settler I saw on TV the other day talking about the illegal settlements in the West Bank. And she was saying how, well, it's our land in the Bible. Those Palestinians shouldn't be here. The Bible gave it to us. And I just wanted to go to her, so you've got idiots like that on both sides saying that kind of BS, but it just doesn't matter about your stupid Bible. It matters about the law. And also there is history to play too. At a certain point, you don't get your land back. Native Americans are not getting their land back. Germany is not getting Strasbourg back. The Poles lost a lot of land too. They're not getting it back. I mean, that also plays a role too over time. Over time, sometimes you just lose stuff, but each situation's different. I mean, it's, well, China's going to try to get Taiwan back. Clearly, it's possible. They may try, right? Oh, wow. Sorry, James. Jesus. Yeah, I don't understand the intelligence failures. People were talking about the intelligence. Do people actually? Let me ask the Israelis that are here. Somebody was mentioning the intelligence failure, not knowing that this was going to happen, and And even the fact of moving troops, supposedly moving some troops that would have been near Gaza to the West Bank because of troubles there with the settlers, whatever it was. I mean, does anybody in Israel, I asked you guys this before, and I think you all said it was a conspiracy theory. Does anybody in Israel really think that like Netanyahu knew this was coming and let it happen because he wanted to use this to rally the war cry or whatever? I know when I asked this before, I think people pretty much said no, most do not. But I mean, is it just a fringe is my guess. Well, it depends who the yeses are. I mean, some of you, I'm guessing, aren't from Israel. I'm asking the folks in Israel if Israelis think this, not if some lunatic halfway around the world thinks it. Well, I mean, supposedly the Egyptians did try to warn them before, although that still could be a simple case of depending, the Israelis going, we got it covered. Don't worry about it. They always threaten us. You know what I mean? But yeah, Israel assumed Hamas won't attack. Also, Israel could have assumed, we get warnings about Hamas every day, right? I was asking, does anybody serious in Israel believe that Netanyahu let this happen? That's why there was such an intelligence failure, because Netanyahu knew something was up and he wanted them to attack so that he could use it to blah, blah, blah. I don't know. It sounds crazy to me, but people ask it sometimes. I mean, I think it's doubtful. Yeah, fair enough. Natan says conspiracy. I would agree. I think that kind of stuff, it just strikes me as too, Netanyahu's an idiot, but he's an Israeli and he's a patriot. He's not going to let them kill his own people. But he's a duplicitous little ass, but he's not going to let his own people die. I don't think. I don't believe that. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think part of it is they probably got the warnings, and the warnings were just like every other warning. They probably get warnings all the time, I mean, that could have easily been it right there. That he went, yeah, okay. I'm sure there's concern, but I mean, Magical says, with the tunnels being bombed, is there enough concern for hostages being in the tunnels? There's concern, but it's the same. I mean, thank you, Aiden. I will give the Israeli government credit for one thing. They don't seem terribly concerned about whether their bombs are killing their own citizens in those tunnels. They don't, which at least says to you that they're not necessarily trying to kill civilians, but they look at this as, we need to get rid of this group. And if civilians die, is what they're doing. That doesn't make it right, but it is interesting that I think for the people kidnapped as well, some of the families aren't really thrilled because they could be killing some of the people kidnapped. But also, if you're a government, what do you do? If you're a government, do you not try to take out the kidnappers because they might kill the kidnapped themselves? Hostages may die. Well, I mean, they're saying hostages died. I don't know whether that's true. Do we know that, though? I'm not going to trust the Palestinian sources saying that the hostages died from Israeli bombing, I don't even know if that they do know. Yeah. Turtle's saying, do they know if they're even alive? I don't even know if they do know if the hostages are alive. A lot of them, right? I mean, you'd have to see up-to-date video to even know if they were alive, I'm yawning to you all again. Sorry. I don't know. I don't know enough about it. James Walton had a good question. I don't know enough about the whole thing, but he says, how could they be there for 8 hours before there was a reaction by the Israeli government? And he's talking about some of the stories we've heard here on TV. Thank you, Jeremy. Where, for example, one woman, the woman who's the daughter, either she's the daughter or her husband's the son of a retired Israeli general. And they were in a kibbutz in their safe room, and they were there for either they were attacked and left, or I don't know what or I think they were outside trying to get into the safe room, and they were there for like 8 hours before and the military never showed up. And finally, the retired general father finally showed up and rescued them. But I mean, that kind of stuff just blows my mind as to what the hell, So I don't know. I don't know enough of what Friends were in a safe room for over 24 hours. Jesus. Yeah. Thank you, Lizard. You know, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know enough about it as far as what happened there. Yeah. You know, then again, there were over 1,000 of the, okay, even 3,000, right. If it was 3,000 Hamas who invaded, and they did spread out a lot. I mean, what I was seeing on the map was, I don't have my Israel map is shiny. You know, I had to print this on regular paper and it won't be shiny. But what I was seeing was they were like they were all over here, these attacks. And then it even went, I don't know if it went out to here, to what is this, Beersheba or something like that it's called. There was one attack that went all the way east as well, but they were really spread out, all the different places they attacked. So you had a lot of different places that you had to get to save people. And I don't know how many kibbutzes were attacked, but boy, it seemed, you know, thank you, Amy. It's, I know living in a country where having safe rooms is so common. That's a creepy thing. I thought about that too when it was happening. Yeah. Like even having a safe room. I mean, we just don't, rich people might hear, but most of us don't hear, you know, Telekiwi, I don't butcher names. I don't have my glasses on and I can't read the map. Don't be a bitch. It says Beersheba. If I can read it, I can read it. Beersheba. I couldn't tell what the letters were, you jerk. You owe me a gift for that one. So, Beersheba. All right. Well, Palestinians don't get a safe room. Guess why? Palestinians aren't even invited into the tunnels. Hamas built shelters for themselves in Gaza. The Palestinians aren't allowed into the shelters even, which is ridiculous. So, you know. Oh, yep, it's true. Oh, excuse me. Okay, I keep yawning at you guys. Sorry. Well, yeah, but it's the government of it's the government of Gaza. So, but they don't. But you know, yeah. Well, I mean, you know, talk to their government. Talk to the Arab governments in the region. Anyway. All right, guys. I'm going to call it quits. Forget the recap. This was too long this was just way too many. There were just too much news today. I don't want to do the recap when the news is too long. It takes too much. So thank you, Heine, for that. I've got to, and I've got to do my TikTok videos still tonight, which exhaust me, but I do need to get them up there. Thank you, Mark Starr. So, anyway, all right, guys. Well, that's it. Well, thank you. I know I don't mean to yawn at you all. I'm just tired. I'm always tired. You know me. Beersheba. It's pronounced like Beher, but Beersheba. Remember, one of the things you guys need to do when you do syllables is show which syllable is accented. You do that by making all caps for that syllable. Yeah, I don't know any Hebrew, so I wouldn't even guess as to how to pronounce names. For the auction items to be viewed. Well, I don't have the new stuff yet. I mean, I only have 3 new. Where are they even? Oh, they're packed up. I have 3 new ornaments, but they're packed up already. They're very nice ornaments. But otherwise, the other auction stuff I haven't even picked out yet. Since I'm flying Saturday, I'm kind of like, I have to ship some more ornaments that I'm auctioning. I had to ship to Chicago tomorrow. So Beersheba, that's how I would pronounce it, but who knows? So that was the last, I think it's the last egg. I'm pretty sure the last egg we just auctioned off right now. That's it for eggs. All right, guys, I'm going to yawn at you again. All right. All right, guys, I'm going to sign off. Thank you for the gifts. Thank you, mods. Thank you for a civil discussion. Most of all of you remaining. Thank you, Bob West. How many eggs? Because I've got cool eggs that were made in Ukraine that are Easter eggs that they do a very cool design with wax on it and then dip it in ink, take off the wax, dip it in ink, and it's called batik in English, the technique. And they make really cool eggs, these beautifully designed eggs. And I bought several from Ukraine, and was auctioning them off. So that's what they were asking. That's what they were asking about, how many eggs I have. In a foreign language, that would sound funny. In English, it doesn't sound as sexual. in a foreign, like in Spanish, it would sound very sexual. How much are you getting for the auction items? I mean, it's listed there. The winners are listed in the auctions. So there's listed right there. You can see who won and what they bid. So you sell eggs here in Israel? Yeah, well, we sell eggs, but we sell just the boring eggs. I didn't keep any of the eggs though. No, none of the eggs. Nope. I mean, there's only so much little trinkets I can keep. I've kept some of the bigger cool stuff, like some of the, I've kept some of the pieces of the fighter jets and stuff like that I think are very cool. But the eggs are too small. I don't want to. I have nowhere to put it. All right, guys. Oh, Shane, congrats. Yeah, I'm going to Mom's on Saturday. Yep. All right, guys. I will talk to you tomorrow night, 6:00 Eastern, as usual. All right. Talk to you then. Stooge, I'm not going over to Discord right now, but I mean, Discord, real quick. Discord, depends what you mean by participate. Discord's free. There's a couple different, if you pay, you get access to the paid auction, which is VIP. The regular auction is open to everybody, the public. And I do a Saturday show. This Saturday I'm flying, so it won't be this Saturday, but I normally do a Saturday show. I might do Sunday, we'll see, for the paid subscribers on all the services. Discord is a bunch of you, and then TikTok is the other one. That are only for the paid subscribers. So you don't have to pay, but if you were to pay the monthly thing, you could do it on YouTube. You could do it on a lot of services, but I'm not going to Discord right now anyway. But when I do go after the show, it's free to everybody. It's the weekend one. That's the weekend one just for subscribers, and then the auctions and stuff like that. So anyway, it's just a way of supporting my work. But in any case, I don't know if that answered. You know what? Discord itself is free. Feel free to go check out the Discord. It's discord.aravosis.com, or download Discord's app and just search for Aravosis, and you can join the forum there. And then if you got more questions, ask maybe before you pay for anything, so you understand what we got. All right, guys. All right. Good night, all. Good to see you again. Can you say good to see you again, Matan, in Hebrew? I can't say anything in Hebrew. I don't speak Hebrew. I don't speak Hebrew at all. So I can say shalom, and that's about, and what's the Baruch Atan? Only because I learned that hearing it on TV. Baruch Atan Adonai something. That's it. That's all I know in Hebrew. And that's just from hearing Jews on television do the prayer. So, all right, guys, have a good night. Oh, I don't mind Matan. He's okay. All right, I'll see you guys later. That Israeli sense of humor.